Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today, and thank you to Craig and Maureen. I'm Greg Kunst, CEO of Aurion Biotech. And today I'm here to talk about a cell therapy that has the potential to change the way we address corneal disease around the world. So I spent a good part of my career in ophthalmology, and I think about the big changes that we've seen over the years that have been truly transformational in our field. Certainly, the advent of modern cataract surgery, phacoemulsification, without question, anti-VEGFs, OCT imaging across ophthalmology, but we're really at the precipice right now where cell therapy has the potential to be truly transformational, not only in corneal endothelial disease, but across the spectrum of diseases where cell death is the primary cause of disease. And that holds true in many applications in ophthalmology. Now, we're going to talk specifically today about a cell therapy targeting corneal endothelial disease, and I'll get to in a second why corneal endothelial disease is so important and where I think we can be transformational. But our cell therapy is a very straightforward procedure. It's done by a broad base of ophthalmologists. It's a procedure in which we go into the eye, we polish the eye, polish off the disease endothelium, inject cells, and lay patients face down for a short period of time. This is a procedure that's scalable, that can be done by many ophthalmologists. Now, why corneal endothelial disease? Well, it's pretty straightforward. As we look at corneal endothelial disease rates around the world, it's quite prolific. So the estimation is if you take the work that was done by the NIH in the 1960s, that work supports about 4% of the population over the age of 40 is prevalent corneal endothelial disease. What that translates is 32 million eyes in the US, Europe, and Japan, or about 1 million eyes per year in those parts of the world from an incidence basis. More importantly, we know today about 7 million people are blind simply because they do not have access to corneal tissue in many parts of the world. This is in places like China and India and many of the developing parts of the world. We need something different than our current approach of using eye banking to address corneal endothelial disease. And how we're going to do that with cell therapy is a couple-fold. One is what we're able to do with our cell therapies. We can take a single donor today and make about 1,000 treatments. And that's remarkable when we think about the scalability of that. But we actually have data, we have early data that suggests that we might be able to even get as high as 25,000 doses for every donor. The supply of tissue around the world all is resolved. But Praveen brought a really, really important point up in his presentation. There are very few corneal specialists around the world, and there's very few that are actually doing corneal transplant. If you look at the United States, there's about 1,200 corneophiles in the United States. I would estimate about 300 regularly do corneal transplant. We know in places like Japan, there are only 50 members of the Corneal Transplant Society. So something has to change. And you saw earlier in the earlier slide, this is a procedure that can be done by, frankly, any anterior segment specialist. Obviously, we'll start with the corneal community, but if you can imagine in parts of the world today where there's no tissue available and there's no corneal specialist, if we can provide the scaling that we're talking about and we can put this in the hands of cataract specialists in many parts of the world, this can truly change the treatment rates of corneal endothelial disease. So with all that, that's all fine and well, but what does the data tell us about what this drug can actually do? We've now treated over 130 patients. This drug came out of Shigeru Kaneshida's labs in the Kyoto Prefecture University in Japan. He started this back in 2003. He dosed the first patients in 2013, dosed 65 patients over a series of 3 trials. We in-licensed this in 2020 and immediately went to El Salvador to run originally validation trials of the work that Kaneshida had done and then work to further optimize our procedure. We did this with 4 U.S. corneal specialists. That's the reason why we went to El Salvador. We wanted to do this in the hands of U.S. doctors, and we wanted to do it at a different site with a different patient population. So in total, we treated 130 patients. This is the original work that was published by Kaneshida. So this was published in 2 years in the New England Journal of Medicine and in 5 years in ophthalmology. You can see very quickly that the results are remarkable. So we see patients that have true disease that have mean central corneal thickness of 743 microns by 6 months are back to healthy ranges and are stable at 5 years. On vision, more importantly, all these patients were legally blind, very quickly had a restoration of vision. I can tell you, I saw patient number 1 last December at 9 years with Shigeru. That patient is still doing remarkably well. We'll publish on that here soon. All these patients continue at almost 10 years now to be doing well. How rare do we have therapies at this stage of development that we know at 10 years out they continue to work? Here's a multi-study analysis that we did across the Japanese cohort and the El Salvadorian cohorts. The IOTA-1 study was the original validation study in El Salvador. The Escalon study was a dose-masked a study that we did to prepare us for our U.S. trials. What's most interesting and important about this data is the consistency of the data. And so this is looking at central corneal thickness. When you look at all three trials with very different patients with very different stages of disease, we see consistent improvements back to healthier ranges of central corneal thickness through baseline all the way to 1 year. But look at the speed at which these patients, by 1 month, there's a remarkable recovery in edema. More importantly is what happens to vision. These patients at 1 month start to have significant amounts of visual improvement, but more importantly, at 12 months, we're seeing 80 to 90% of patients at 3 lines of improvement. Why that's important? That's the FDA approval endpoint. 2, if we look at the original anti-VEGF trials, we were looking at 30 to 40%. Getting 80 to 90% in ophthalmology at 3 lines of improvement is not something that we normally see. So where are we at? We are in the middle of our phase 1/2 in the United States. We've now dosed our initial patients. That is as Praveen put, the big milestone in front of us that we'll see, can we replicate the results that we've seen thus far? We think we have a clinically validated product. It's been in 130 patients. It's been in patients for over 10 years. We see both outcomes from an anatomic perspective and a functional perspective that are remarkable. We do have approval in Japan now. We're gearing up to commercialize next year in Japan. Our phase 1/2 is on its way, and we're well backed. We're backed by significant investors, and we have a team in place with deep cell therapy and ophthalmology experience. This is something to keep your eyes on. Thank you very much.